Hi, everybody. I'm Marty Brockstein, Senior VP of Licensing International. And on behalf of the association, I'd like to welcome you to Licensing U 2020. We've put together 8 sessions of expert presentations on an array of topics, ranging from a look at the basics of the licensing business to a variety of marketing, legal, research, and other facets of the licensing industry. Before anything else, I'd like to thank our moderators and speakers for contributing their time and expertise. Even beyond these Licensing U sessions, we invite you to visit our website at licensinginternational.org to find out about our other educational and informational offerings designed to help you succeed at your business. We hope that Licensing Week Virtual and Licensing U prove valuable to your future success. Have a great show.
Welcome everybody, my name is Stu Seltzer and it's my honor to present to you the basics of licensing. Here we are it's being premiered at the virtual licensing show 2020. So today we are going to walk through about 8 different modules. We're going to talk about the basics of licensing, kind of basic theory. We're going to get into licensing out, licensing in, we're going to talk about the numbers, talk about the style guide, retail, legal, and we're going to end with a case study. So before we jump right in, let me introduce myself. My name is Stu Seltzer. I'm president of Seltzer Licensing Group. We are a 22-year-old global licensing agency based here in New York City. We also have an office out in LA. And I'll also share my first job in licensing was at Yves Saint Laurent. Yves Saint Laurent is a global fashion company. I worked here in their New York office, and at the time, Yves was alive and well, and he really focused on designing and selling couture dresses that sold for between $5,000 to $10,000. What I worked on was licensing out his brand to other companies. We had about 12 licensees. We had Cartier, which is the first deal I worked on, Cartier to make our jewelry. We had Luxottica to make the eyewear, and many others. And what was really interesting is that those deals were global in nature. So it wasn't just a US deal or a local deal, but the Cartier deal, for example, those products were sold in about 60 countries. The Luxottica eyewear deals, the same thing, all over the US, all over Europe, all over Asia, just tremendous distribution on these deals. So enjoyed working there. Ended up leaving. The company eventually was sold, and now it's part of the same group as the Gucci Group, and got recruited to work at Warner Brothers and worked on the Batman brand. And what was amazing to work on the Batman brand, which is owned by Warner Brothers, is to see the volume, such as instead of working with just 12 licensees, when I was at Warner Brothers, we had 450 different licensing partners, including 11 different t-shirt companies, trading cards, and video games, all types of accessories, you name it. A lot of fun, but really what was interesting is that it's the same methodology, the same mechanics to do a licensing deal as it is in fashion and as it is in entertainment. After Warner Brothers decided to start my own company, which was now 1998 is when that started, and been fortunate to be working and have worked on many deals over the years. The other thing that I'll share is that I've been an adjunct professor now and just finished my 17th year at New York University, and where I teach a 3-credit undergrad class on brand licensing. Now you have the benefit of all of those classes, all of the 15 classes, 3-hour sessions, 45 hours of classes condensed into this 1-hour seminar just for you. I'm now going to start with the first slide that I share at NYU on the first day of class. This is the first slide the students see. And what you're seeing is your basic marketing 101 pyramid, because the goal of all marketing is to get your customers and move them up the pyramid, become your committed, become your loyalists, become your apostles. And they become that way because their brand affinity rises. And these people at the top, the key is that not only are they your best customers, they are, quote, fans of your brand. And once they're fans of your brand, that's when they're going to buy a lot of products and services with your brand on it. And that's true whether it's people that want to go out and buy their that Batman lunchbox, or maybe they want to buy, they're fans of the Yankees, they're going to buy the New York Yankee t-shirt or sweatshirt or jersey, and on and on. So in fact, let me start by saying, all right, then what is licensing? And it's almost, I could share it with a little story about Bob. And Bob has got a t-shirt company, and primarily he's selling black t-shirts. And, he's got a nice business, but then somebody told him about the world of licensing. And he said, you know what? Let me explore this because I want to grow my business. It's all about growth. How can I grow my business? Bob is thinking, and heard about licensing. And he said, you know what? I heard about this licensing thing. If I license in the Batman brand and create a new t-shirt with all of a sudden taking my black t-shirt and I'll print something on it, and all of a sudden I have a Batman t-shirt, I can actually spike my sales. And that's exactly what Bob did. He went out and he licensed in the Batman brand, and he paid Warner Brothers a royalty to use the Batman brand, and he ended up spiking his sales. Sales went up, and they all lived happily ever after. So that's a very short overview of what licensing is all about. Let me also share how I define licensing, because a lot of people at this show, a lot of people are retailers and lawyers, and there's a lot of aspects to it. But when I talk about licensing and licensing transactions and doing the deals, I think of it almost on a continuum. I think on one side you have wholesale sales, where you're actually selling a product to a retailer, and that's an important part. That's not really what people in this room are doing. We're not here selling. We're not really out there meeting with retailers to sell them product right now. And then the other side is mergers and acquisition. That's that legal M&A where you're looking to buy or merge and so forth. And that's an important step in business, but that's really not what we're here to talk about. It's everything in between. And some of these words get commingled. Some of them are licensing agreement, partner marketing, collab venture, strategic alliance. Whatever it is, I call an alliance, defined by two companies getting together. They're sharing the control, they're sharing the risks, and of course, we're all in it to share the rewards. Okay, so let me start talking about licensing out. And I'll start by showing you some pictures of brands, because I think it's important to know who the big players are. Now, if we were in a big room together, I would then say, okay, who can name a brand that's a top licensor? When I say licensor, that's defined as the brand owner, as opposed to the licensee, which is the manufacturer. So in this case, I'm going to share with you some logos and so forth, because License Global Magazine, people that run the show, and now it's Informa, division of Informa, they put out a ranking every year, and it ranks the top 150 licensors based on how much revenue they're generating, how much royalty revenue, how much licensing revenue they're generating. And what I have on this slide next to me is the top 20, not the 150, but the top 20 list. And so I want to share that with you. So I'm gonna wait for 5 seconds, and if you can guess who is on this list, just think, who can be on this list? All right, you now know. Now I'll reveal it. So the first one to reveal is Disney. Disney is number one on this list. What's interesting about Disney is that they were number one on this list before they bought Marvel, before they bought Lucas. In fact, this list has been around for maybe 20 plus years. Ever since this list was created, Disney has been number one. That's how big Disney is as far as a licensing entity. They're tremendous. I'm also going to show you all the other entertainment brands on this list. And there's a number, because entertainment is a big part of this industry. In fact, if we were at the live show and we were walking around, you would look around and you'd say, oh my gosh, there is so much entertainment brands here. And primarily because if you were to look at the whole industry, and we'll look at it soon, the majority is entertainment brands, or the biggest segment is entertainment brands. So other entertainment brands on this list, you have Warner Brothers, which is right there at number 4, with Batman and Superman and Bugs Bunny, and with their Space Jam 2 coming out, and Harry Potter and so forth. Number 6, Hasbro, and they just bought eOne, which is Peppa Pig. They also own, of course, Transformers, G.I. Joe, and so forth. Number 7 is Universal, and Universal just bought DreamWorks, So they have the Trolls franchise, they have Jurassic World, they have the Minions franchise, they also have the Office TV show. Number 9 is Nickelodeon, which is SpongeBob, Paw Patrol, and now Baby Shark and some other great stuff. And number 11 is Rainbow, based in Italy, a huge hit in Europe. And number 12 is Sanrio, which is known for a Hello Kitty brand. And so it's just good to know who some of these major players are. The next category on this list that I'll share is fashion. Fashion makes a lot of sense. And coming in at the number 1 fashion licensor, in this case, is Philip Van Heusen. Yes, they're a shirt company, but they also own a lot of brands. They own the Calvin Klein brand, Tommy Hilfiger, and they license those brands out. Authentic Brand Group, which owns Nine West. They also own Sports Illustrated and Iconics and Sequential and Blue Star Alliance, a lot of these brands, and they are generating tons of money by licensing their brands. And then finally, you're thinking, hey, what about sports? Well, sports comes in next, number 10. The biggest sport here is baseball. And people might ask, well, why is baseball the biggest? Because I'm a big NFL fan. Why is it NFL? Well, the answer, and we did ask some of the execs at Major League Baseball once, and they believe it's because they have the most number of games, the most number of live games. Not this year, but when they have their live games, they do have the most, being that their season is usually 162 games and so forth. But NBA, MLB, NFL, NBA are in the top 20. NHL is in the top 30. And then finally, the last category I'll share is corporate brands. And you have Better Home and Garden, which has a tremendous direct-to-retail license deal with Walmart. You'll hear more about what that means. Chevrolet, and even Electrolux and so forth. So that kind of rounds out who are the big players. What's interesting is we took this list and said, all right, what category do they come from? And here we analyzed and found out that 46% of the top 150 actually come from the entertainment industry. That's how big entertainment is as far as generating revenue for the industry. So, it is this show, if you were here live, walking around, you'll see that there's a lot of entertainment companies, a lot of fashion companies, a lot of corporate brands, and sports are large as well. So that kind of is a quick look. Now, art brands are here. It's a sliver as far as the top 150, but art brands are relevant as well. So the next thing I want to share is what is the goal of licensing? And I'll share 2 pieces of research. First is that some research that was done 10 plus years ago, where they took this list and they said, let's do a survey. Let's find out what is the number 1 goal of these companies who are in the licensing industry. What is the number 1 goal that they have? And not surprising, their number 1 goal was money. They are in it to generate royalty revenue. And then what's the number 2? Number 2 is brand awareness. They're in it to really, grow their own brand awareness, create more consumer touch points, have more consumer engagement with their brand, just extend their brand overall. So that was the number 2. Number 3, there's trademark protection and things like that. So the real interesting reveal on this survey is that less than half, only 45% of the companies are in this for the money. So less than half are in it for the money. So that means the majority, over half, are in the licensing industry for something beyond just revenue. So that's important to know. The other thing I'll share, just a side note, is that we did some research in our own company a couple of years ago where we surveyed just the corporate brands to find out, all right, well, let's look at just 35 of these corporate brands. Let's find out what their number 1 goal is. And what we found is that their number 1 goal was not money. Their number 1 goal was that brand engagement, brand awareness. Money is important, but it only came in at about 20% of the companies in the corporate industry are in it for money alone. There's a lot of other reasons that the corporate brands are interested in licensing, such as that brand awareness, trademark protection, and things like that. Now let's look at some examples of the benefits of licensing. Number 1, to show you an example of why companies or how companies benefit financially from licensing, let's just look at Star Wars. Star Wars, an incredible brand created in the 70s by George Lucas, but they have done an unbelievable job creating product, staying in touch with their fans, and really giving the fans what they want in a very methodical, strategically planned out manner. And they have generated tremendous revenue, royalty revenue from their licensing efforts. These are just some of the pictures, some of the images of some of the licensed products related to Star Wars. And so I'm using Star Wars as an example as how licensing can be tremendously lucrative for the licensor. Next example, as far as brand awareness, this is a little bit funny, but true. I'm using an example from some of my friends at Jack Daniel's who have licensed out their brand and have done an incredible job by licensing out their brand to barbecue sauce. And Heinz makes this barbecue sauce, so they have tremendous distribution. The other thing that caught my eye is the way they've licensed it out to candy. And as a friend told me, it's just a great way to get the next generation to start, getting that acquired taste and getting familiar with the brand. And that is a joke, but true too. So that's just one example of the brand awareness. This next example I'm going to show you about brand awareness is something that we put together for our client Klondike Ice Cream. And for Klondike, we were able to license out the brand to the fashion handbag company Kate Spade. And by doing that, they created a limited edition series, and this product was sold in all the Kate Spade boutiques around the world, along with being sold at Macy's. But what was amazing, and what the people at Klondike really loved, was the fact that Kate Spade advertised this product. And there were two things that happened. First, they ran some ads in the fashion magazines in November. And first, the people at Klondike are never advertising in November because ice cream is, a seasonal summer business. So they don't advertise in November, December, January. So just the fact that Klondike could be advertised in November is just a nice little boost for them. And number two is that they're never advertising in fashion magazines. They typically advertise in People magazine and Cosmo and others. But the fact that they were advertising in some of these high fashion magazines like Elle and Glamour and so forth was just a lot of fun. And of course they sold out and so forth. But again, the key here was that Klondike did it really to enhance their brand and to kind of create more fun consumer touch points with their fans. The next example of a nice benefit of licensing is what I call supporting the core product. In this example, I'm going to use another client, which is Miracle-Gro. And what Miracle-Gro did was to license out their brand, and they are known as the #1 brand of soil, #1 brand in gardening, both Scotts and Miracle-Gro. Scotts, of course, Scotts Miracle-Gro is the name of the company. Scotts is more for the grass and grass seed and so forth. But they licensed out the Miracle-Gro brand to raised garden beds, these wooden garden beds. And it's a home run because it supports the product, meaning anybody who's going to buy this product must then buy some soil to go and complete the project, complete the product. And the best part about it is that they did some promotions and still have them today. In fact, if you walk into a Lowe's, you'll probably see this type of setup where they have the raised garden beds on a whole display right next to the soil. So when you're buying this licensed product, it can actually help support the core product right next to it. So that's the example of why licensing can actually help your core and help support your core products. The next example I want to share is with the American Red Cross. American Red Cross, why are they licensing, you may ask? Why is a charity brand even licensing? And we can share. In fact, I can share because our firm represents the American Red Cross. And why are they licensing their brand, you may ask? Well, the goal here is really to support their core mission. And their core mission is to help those in need, is really to help get people prepared for emergencies. And that is why we've licensed out their brand to products such as the Kidde smoke detector, or a first aid kit, or most recently we launched a dog life jacket, really to help those in need. And on top of that, the royalty revenue they receive is going to their mission, is going to do all these incredible things that they do. In fact, I'll share one more example right here. This is a bottle of generic hand sanitizer, and it's on sale everywhere now. But here is a bottle of Red Cross branded hand sanitizer. And this isn't an endorsement. This is not a philanthropic venture, or I should say a cause-related marketing venture. It is really a licensed product. As you'll see from the smoke detector here, and also from the package design here, this is a fully branded Red Cross hand sanitizer product. And this really stands for trust. This really tells the people that yes, this has been thoroughly tested, this has been thoroughly reviewed by the Red Cross, and the product supports their mission, meaning the revenue they receive supports their mission. So just another example of all types of brands, but here, the benefit here is to support your core mission. So if you're listening and you have a charity brand and you're managing a brand that's a nonprofit cause and things like that, well, there might be revenue opportunities for you. There might be licensing opportunities for you. And the last benefit, the last thing I want to share is for the idea of using licensing to protect your trademark. Now, in America, based on common law, it's really use it or lose it. And there are 30 common classifications of your trademark. So there might be one for beverage, there might be one for apparel, there might be one for domestic products like dishes and plates, there might be one for services. Anyway, in this example, Coca-Cola, they own clearly the one for beverages. But years ago in the 80s, they were challenged in court where somebody was making a Coca-Cola t-shirt. And they decided, they had said, oh, we better make our own products, we better fully expand our program. And at the time, they decided to use licensing as a method to go and expand their products and protect their trademark. We've seen that happen with other brands as well, where they said, you know what, we better have these products and we better have them ourselves to protect our trademark. Now, of course, Coca-Cola has gone way beyond there, where they have a very, very big, lucrative fashion collaboration type licensing program. But early on in the 80s, they were looking at licensing as a way to protect their trademark. So that's a review of the licensing out benefits.
My honor to introduce Joni Camacho, who is VP NBC Universal TV Franchise Strategy, and as Vice President, setting the strategy and executing the strategy on all the franchise TV properties here at NBC. So welcome, Joni, live from LA. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Stu. Thank you for having me and inviting me to participate in this. I'm very happy to be here.
And how long have you been at NBC Universal?
I've been with NBC Universal for 12 years now, and it's great to be a member of Universal Brand Development and work across the breadth of properties that are under our umbrella.
Oh, fantastic. Can you share some of the brands that are part of the NBC Universal team these days?
Absolutely. I think we're known for our very successful franchises, Jurassic World, Trolls, Minions, Fast and Furious, and more recently, some popular television titles have come to the fore.
Great. Let's do a deep dive into one of them. If you could share a case study, let's choose maybe, if it's correct in saying, America's favorite TV show, at least on Netflix.
I'll allow that.
Right.
Yeah, so the Office, I think, everyone is familiar with The Office right now and have been for many years. 2020 is the 15th anniversary year of The Office, and it's one of those rare shows that is as popular in streaming as it was during its first run. And so the original audience has come back to the show, and what we found is that a whole new generation of fans have also found the show as a result of the streaming.
Yeah, fantastic. So when we talk about The Office and being that it is so popular, how has NBC really capitalized on that? Mm-hmm. To, if you could share kind of the licensing strategy and the licensing program that you developed.
Yeah, historically, we've had a pretty robust consumer products program for the office across multiple categories, and that has really continued to today. I think first and foremost, we have a very strong apparel program at both specialty and mass. We had the number one Christmas sweater at Target this past holiday season, and still have the number one shirt at Target. And we've also expanded from doing sort of that basic assortment of apparel to also doing some co-branded collaborations with great success with both apparel partners and also retail partners. We've also have deep roots in the game and toy category. We're still going strong, I think, with board games and collectibles. And really the collectibles have been resurgent, and we have had great success with Funko over this past year, and it continues into this year. So yeah, it's been great, and we're taking this opportunity to expand into publishing, which is something that is new for us on the office. And we have a day at Dunder Mifflin Elementary. It is a picture book from Little Brown. It's for millennial parents and their children. And when it went up for pre-sale on Amazon, it was number one. So to say that fans are excited about new content coming from us would be an understatement. We've also had great success with our first ever subscription box from Culturefly, which sold out in its first drop, and we'll be looking for more of those to come. And then I would say, you know, we're leaning in and paying homage to our fans who have created an entire meme language around the show and really kept it alive and part of the social conversation. And so later this year, we'll be launching the Office expansion pack to What Do You Meme? So there's just a lot coming from the Office, and it just continues to gain momentum.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, incredible number of products and incredible success of those products. I mean, when you mentioned earlier the Christmas sweater, I know, you know, we're talking about that ugly Christmas sweater that really stands out.
Yeah.
And and that Dunder Mifflin Elementary School book, the fact that it's already a bestseller in the pre-sale. I know I ordered a few copies, and I know it's going to be a big hit. So that's
yeah, we've
a lot of
been,
fun.
I think, just floored by the response, not only in those categories where we have a history, but as we expand and as we do new things, the fans are really meeting us there. And that is our goal, to provide something for every fan of the show and make sure that we are super serving them.
No, that's great. So here's a question for those people who are watching this right now or in the audience and so forth. If they are saying, my gosh, The Office, #1 TV show on Netflix, I should work with them. Are you still open to looking to expand this program?
Absolutely. I think we're always looking for new and innovative ways to expand the brand. We're looking for best-in-class partners, but also for those up-and-comers that might bring us something that is new, truly, that we haven't done before, and we are not slowing down. So yes, always open.
That's great. Well, thank you. That is, you know, a great overview. Really exciting to see the success of as you say, a 15-year-old TV show to have this much success at retail is very inspiring. And so, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your time. And
absolutely, thank you for the opportunity. Always happy to talk The Office.
You bet. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Stu.
So now I want to switch gears and talk about licensing in. And we'll start by talking about, why do companies want to license in? What benefits do companies get when they license in? What is the real power of, you know, why are they even here? So if you are a manufacturer, like that first example of Bob's T-shirt company, and you're thinking, should I consider licensing in? Well, you watch the next 10 minutes. So I'm going to start with a video clip by Hoda Kotb and Dateline. And in this clip, which was done a number of years ago, it shows Hoda Kotb interviewing some kids, talking about the power of licensing and the power of some of these brands.
First, we asked 3- and 4-year-olds to choose between a cupcake with the American flag and one with a familiar cartoon character.
This cupcake or this cupcake?
Mm,
You think it tastes better than this one?
yeah,
Why do you like that one better?
because it's Spider-Man.
Almost all the kids picked a character over the red, white, and blue. So we upped the ante. We asked these preschoolers to choose between a cupcake and a banana. This time we recruited Scooby and Shrek to pitch the fruit.
There's banana.
Most went with what Shrek and company seemed to endorse.
So maybe licensing is the solution to childhood obesity. Well, let me share with you the second part of this video.
To see just how far these characters could sway kids, we asked what would they rather have for breakfast, a banana or a rock? We decorated the rock this time.
Which would you rather have for breakfast? For breakfast.
This one.
For breakfast.
This one.
An overwhelming majority went straight for the rock.
Maybe licensing gets a little too carried away. All right, so let me now share with you a few examples and benefits of licensing in and show you some examples of how other companies are using licensing in as a way to grow their business. So the first example I'm going to share is with a company called Sterling. And Sterling Manufacturing, what they did was make inflatable furniture. They made inflatable chairs, they made some pool floats. They were in the business of making these inflatable products. And they sold them, had some nice distribution. But when we started working with them, they were looking for a way to expand. And we recommended licensing. And what license do you think they would take? Well, the first product that we licensed for them was the NFL. And here's an example, the first chair that they created. So they took a basic mold that they used to sell, and all of a sudden they added the Dallas Cowboy logos, colors, and so forth, and had tremendous success. I just remember when they launched this, it was launched on Home Shopping Network, and they ended up selling out. They created all 30 teams, all different logos, and so forth. It was such a success in the first 2 years that they then engaged us to go out there and they secured the Major League Baseball license, NBA license, NHL license, the top 30 collegiate teams, and they expanded into some entertainment chairs as well. And what they found is that it opened up a whole new channel of distribution for them. What they found is it became a huge hit on college campuses with college kids who didn't really have a lot of furniture, a lot of room for furniture. But when they were watching a game, a sport game or a Monday Night Football or whatever, they would pull this out of the closet, blow it up, and it has even a cup holder or beer holder, what have you, and was able to really entertain their friends and so forth. So the first benefit that we see, the most important benefit that we see in licensing is that it really helps spike your sales. Second example, with the same theory of spiking your sales, is way back when a teddy bear company, just a basic teddy bear company, Gund, was making teddy bears, and they always have. But all of a sudden, they secured a license that catapulted them. They secured that Winnie the Pooh license. And again, instead of just selling a generic product, here they are boosting their sales, selling a branded product with all the awareness of Winnie the Pooh and all the everybody loves Winnie the Pooh and all that pent-up demand for Winnie the Pooh. They were able to really capitalize on that. This brings me to the first of 3 key principles that I want to share with you. And the first key principle I want to share is that licensing can make a good product great. It can't make a bad product good, but it can make a good product great. And another example to show this is this. Anybody watching this that's from Minneapolis or from Minnesota might know this brand, Gedney. Gedney is one of the country's biggest makers of pickles, and the brand Gedney is a big brand in Minnesota, and they sell in Minnesota, and they're at the state fair and all this great stuff, but the brand Gedney does not really exist outside of Minnesota. And that is why they decided to work with us, and we put this deal together for them to license in the Del Monte brand. And they licensed in the brand, and they created a product called Del Monte Pickles. Same product, essentially, and it created a whole full product line. But this brand, because it's Del Monte, because it's got national awareness, because there's national advertising, is very well known, and because it's already Del Monte, an accepted brand in all the department, in all the grocery stores, in all the mass stores, this company Gedney's had tremendous success by selling the Del Monte branded pickles around the country. And this is also a good example of the idea that Gedney Pickles, they have a good product. They've always had a good product. But by adding the Del Monte brand, they now have a great product. And that, you could say the same thing about the Gund company. They've always had good products. Some people think they are great products to start. But by adding that Winnie the Pooh Disney license, they now have a great, great product. Another reason that the manufacturers want to get into the business is really to reach a new demographic. And this example I'm going to share with you, it's with a past client we've done work with, FTD Flowers. Now, those of you who are over 40 or 50 certainly know the brand FTD Flowers. A huge network in its heyday, had 10,000 different flower locations where you can call up, or in the early days even telegram and things like that. But these days, most of, or I would say half their business is online. But when they came to us, they said, you know what, we're not really selling much to the 20-year-olds. We are selling a lot to the 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, but we really need a brand that can help us penetrate those 20-year-olds. And with that, and what are 20-year-olds doing, and when are they buying their most flowers? Around weddings. And that is why we decided to work with them and license in the brand Vera Wang and create a whole new business for them called Vera Wang Flowers. And if you were to go to the FTD website, you can see there's a whole section for Vera Wang Flowers, or you might end up at the Vera Wang Flowers URL on your own. And this association has been a real winner. It's actually won a Licensing International award. But the best part was when this alliance was first announced. FTD Flowers, being a public company at the time, they announced this with a lot of fanfare, and just on the announcement of working with Vera Wang, their stock actually shot up that day over 6%, which was a lot of fun to watch, made a lot of people happy, and it's been a great success ever since. So not only is it a great success on paper and financially, but it reached their goal, because their goal again was to reach the 20-year-olds. And they found that more and more people were buying these flowers around weddings. And of course, that was the intent of why we licensed in the Vera Wang brand to begin with. So that was a few examples. I'm going to share a couple of more with you, because when we think of this, the other key reason people license in is really to enhance their credibility. Because when you think of what licensing is, what are you really licensing? You're licensing in somebody else's brand. And when you think of it, I remember reading a Brand Week article where it said in America, it costs roughly $50 million to launch a brand nationwide, and takes multiple years to do that. And of course, when you do that, there's no guarantee that that brand will be successful. So when you think of that, about comparing licensing versus spending $50 million to launch your own brand, a lot of times it makes sense to license a brand, because that can really achieve your goals without that heavy risk. So the next example, as we're talking about examples of how can licensing enhance the credibility of your core product, I'm going to share an example of a client that we work with, which was Westin Hotels. So for Westin Hotels, they had a great, and they still do, have a great fitness product. And in all their 200 hotels, they were looking for a way to enhance the credibility. Now the reason is that they found more and more, they found research that they did that said that more and more of their customers are choosing the hotel, choosing to choose between W or Westin or who knows, or Hilton. They're choosing the hotel based on how good the gyms are. And I'm talking about pre-COVID. This is, of course, pre-COVID. But they were choosing their hotels, how good are their gym products? And what they found is that the Westin hotels actually had very good gyms, but people didn't really think that they were great gyms. They said, oh yeah, they have nice gyms, nothing really stands out. And that is why we embarked on a whole alliance, a whole licensing strategy for them to license in a brand that would really enhance their credibility. We ended up striking a deal with the Reebok brand, the Reebok company, and rebranded 200 gyms and rebranded them as the Westin Workout powered by Reebok. More recently, I'll share that the term was up after 5 years, and just recently it was just changed over to New Balance. But the same theory, the same concept of, hey, let's co-brand our gyms just to show the outside world that we have a gym that has the credibility, has that fitness credential. And that's what creating that Westin Workout powered by Reebok really does. The next example, I want to share the second principle of licensing and then show one more example. And then we're going to take a little side break. And I have a special guest we're going to introduce to chat with us. So the second key principle we're going to share is that licensing can provide that sustainable competitive advantage. Licensing can provide it. Now, if you think in all business, I think of my days in business school and reading the textbook by Michael Porter. He wrote all these incredible books and is a legendary Harvard Business School professor writing about competition and writing about, how do you grow your business and how do you sustain your growth and how do you sustain your competitive position. And it was all about having a sustainable competitive advantage. That was the goal. That was what Michael Porter was talking all about. And I'm here to say that licensing can provide you that sustainable competitive advantage. And we've seen that in some of the examples I just shared with you. The fact that Westin hotels, they were the only ones that could call themselves the Reebok, powered by Reebok gym. More importantly, the guys at Gedney Farms, the guys at Gedney Pickles, that team, they are the only ones that can use that nationally recognized brand Del Monte. All their pickle competitors cannot use the Del Monte brand, only Gedney. And that gives them a real competitive advantage amongst all their other competitors. And some of the other examples we shared as well, all give you that competitive advantage. Only FTD Flowers has the right to use the Vera Wang brand. So all the other flower companies, and there's a number out there, they cannot use Vera Wang. So it does give that competitive, sustainable advantage. The example I'm going to just share with you, and then we're going to take a little side interview here. And to set it up, I'll share using that same principle of licensing, that licensing can provide that sustainable, competitive advantage. Here's an example. Unilever, which owns the Breyers brand, and Breyers is #1 ice cream in America, #1 vanilla, #1 chocolate, and you'll hear more about that. They used to have their own cookies and cream flavor. They decided it was time to enhance that and licensed in the Oreo brand. And being the only one in America to have that brand provides them a sustainable competitive advantage. So now I have a special guest live from London. We have Julie McCleave, who is Director of Licensing, Global Director of Licensing for Unilever, which oversees all these ice cream brands.
Now I am honored to introduce Julie McCleave, coming to you from London, England, who is Director of Licensing at Unilever. And Julie, welcome. And if you could share info on yourself, what you do at Unilever, and of course, the great Unilever company.
Great, thanks, Stu. Thanks for having me. So yes, I've been working for Unilever for a number of years, most recently in licensing. So my career prior to that was sales and marketing, and I moved into licensing about 10 years ago. I've been heading up the global licensing team at Unilever for the last 5 years. We have the honour of representing our brands and our categories across the 4 divisions that Unilever operates under. So that's the personal care division, the food and refreshments division, and the home division. A lot of you will be very familiar with our brands. You'll have them in your cupboards. 7 out of 10 consumers have at least one of our brands in their home. but you may not be so familiar with the company name itself. But we've got a very long history. We're pioneers of innovation, starting back over 120 years ago when William Hesketh introduced Sunlight soap to Victorian England. And interestingly, his objective there was to improve the health and hygiene of Victorian workers, and by introducing soap and hand washing. Isn't it really ironic that actually 120 years on, as as people across the globe, washing our hands and health and hygiene is as important now as it was back then. So we've got a long tradition in this area.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, the soap brands in America, everybody is, of course, incredibly familiar with, including the leading brands of Dove and, and Vaseline and Suave is the #1 shampoo, and incredible brands and global brands as well.
Yeah, and one of our most famous brands globally is Lifebuoy. We do a lot of work in developing markets with the Lifebuoy brand, helping communities improve health and hygiene still, by showing them how soap, a fairly basic product, can really make significant improvements to the well-being of the community.
That's great. Let's move on to one of my favorite products at Unilever. One of my favorite categories, of course, is ice cream, and everybody's favorite category. And can you just paint a quick overview? Where is your market share or leadership position in ice cream in the world?
Okay, Stu. So yeah, I think when I talk to my friends about my job, the ice cream part of my job is definitely the bit that everyone sits up and listens about. So we're the #1 manufacturer of ice cream globally, and also in the US. You'll be familiar, I'm sure, with a lot of the loved brands in the US like Breyers and Klondike and Good Humor and Popsicle. I'm sure you've got them in your freezers at the moment. But also, Ben & Jerry's is part of our portfolio. A huge heritage in that brand, and loved by consumers globally. We've also got brands that are maybe not quite so well known in the US, but again have very big foothold in other markets. So the Magnum ice cream brand in Europe and Southeast Asia, and also Cornetto. So we've got a huge range of products.
That's great. So being that we're here to talk about licensing, can you share, let's start talking about what the ice cream licensing strategy in, like how do you, or can you share a few examples of where Unilever is licensing in a license, and what's the strategy behind it?
Yeah, so it starts very much with looking at the portfolio, looking at the portfolio we currently have, and looking at the consumer needs and where the trends are going and where we might have gaps. So one of the challenges, I guess, of working in ice cream is there is a limitation in terms of the amount of space that we are able to occupy for ice cream, because you need the freezer space. So we don't have ever expanding shelves. So we have to be really selective about the SKUs that we have in the portfolio. And when we bring new SKUs on, we have to be very choiceful. And this is a really important part of partnership, the partnership process. So if you look, for example, at Breyers in the US, we've got a range of products there, but we tend to look to work with the really big brands who bring credentials to ice cream from other categories. So for example, we have a partnership with Reese's, who are the #1 brand in candy, with Heath, the #1 toffee brand, and with Oreo, who are the #1 brand in cookies. So that gives you a kind of a flavor, I guess, of the partnerships that we have. But having said that, we don't just work with the big #1 kind of global partners, as it were. There are also opportunities at a local level to bring consumers their well-loved local brands. So in Southeast Asia, for example, we work with a brand leader in the local market in ice cream. And in the US, we have a partnership with Reese's on the Jolly Rancher range, which, you know, is a very loved local product for the US consumer.
Yeah, actually, let's do a deeper dive into that Unilever Hershey partnership. And I know it goes beyond Breyers. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the partnership really established itself in the US. That's, you know, the home of Reese's and the home of the Hershey company. But you know, we also recognise that that brand is able to stretch into other markets and other formats. So if you look in the US, for example, we also have products in under the Good Humor brand, at single serve ice creams on a stick, and under the Klondike brand with kind of single serve ice cream enrobed with chocolate format. So that's kind of the US side. But interestingly, we recently launched in the UK market a Reese's product there. And that's actually up for a licensing award this year. So we're very excited about that. And that partnership actually extends into LATAM, and it also extends into Southeast Asia.
So what else does Unilever do to support these types of partnerships? Clearly, you know, this Unilever Hershey partnership is tremendous. I'm a big fan of those products myself, but what else do they do to support the sales of that?
Yeah, well, the local marketing teams work really closely with our licensing partners to develop support and campaigns around the products, and that can vary, you know, from a traditional types of support, for example, you know, print media, as the one that we're showing now on Breyers, but also more and more as a business, we are recognizing that actually digital has a huge role to play with the consumer, especially when we're bringing new news. It's the best way of getting consumers engaged and enthusiastic about products, and we do some really fun digital campaigns, as you can see the examples showing now.
Oh, that's fantastic. These are a lot of fun, and I know you know, they're designed, I guess, for the cell phone and all that, the whole digital medium.
Yeah, exactly.
So what, I don't know if you can talk about any of your entertainment partners, because I know, you know, at least in America, you have the Popsicle brand, which is the leader in the frozen ice category. But
Yep.
what, if you could talk about, you know, how do you look at, do you do partnerships? Is it just a local partnership also with the entertainment?
Yeah, so you're right, Stu. So we have to kind of two I guess two strings to the partnerships. What we'd call ingredients partnerships, like the ones with Hershey, where we're in, you know, it's about a delivery of a particular flavor that's unique to that particular parent brand, if you like, but also entertainment licensing does play a role in the portfolio. So one of those examples would be a partnership that we have with Minions. That has, again, started in the US. It's been successful there. We've rolled that out into Europe and actually extended it further than Europe now into Asia, and also into other markets in the rest of the world. So those partnerships are really important because, again, looking at the white spaces, looking at the consumer opportunity for us, but we evaluate them really on a kind of ongoing basis. As I said, they need to play an important part in the portfolio, and we're always being challenged around making sure we've got the most relevant products going forward.
That's great. So here's a question. I know people listening to this or watching this seminar, I expect it is a basics and licensing seminar, so a lot of first-time people entering the industry and things like that. So for those people who are thinking, do I have a brand that's worthy of a Unilever partnership? How do you evaluate these brands, and any advice for those people who are the brand owners watching this now?
Yeah, so I think, as I say, it will really depend on where we are from a strategic point of view. So, and you guys can't second guess that. So, but I think the important thing is that they need to be brands that are strong in their own category. They need to bring something unique and relevant to ice cream, and that often is through either flavor or fun, in the instant example of Minions. So that would be my guide, I guess.
So here's a question. So for Unilever, which is the #1 ice cream, and I'll take the case of Breyers, which is the #1 ice cream brand in America. In fact, Breyers is the #1 vanilla in America. Breyers is the #1 chocolate in America. It's a 150-year-old brand. I know 2 years ago they celebrated their 150th anniversary. So why does Breyers even need licensing?
Yeah, and you're right, Stu. And look, consumers will always love the vanilla flavors, the core flavors. They will always be the kind of underpinning of the portfolio for us. They will never go away. But the fact is that consumers love to try new things, and we really love bringing new news to consumers and inspiring them with new flavors. And the partnerships that we have, as I said, we select them very carefully, because they do have a role to play in the total portfolio. They'll never replace the core business, but they bring new news, and as a business we're always looking to grow, and these new flavors will help unlock new consumer opportunities and growth opportunities for us, which is ultimately the opportunity that we want to drive.
To grow. Fantastic. Well, thank you. I'll end with one final question. That here we are starting summer right now as this event is being played. What is your favorite ice cream flavor? Is it one of the classics, or is it a licensed one?
Oh, interestingly, I have to say, so of the classics, I would say Ben and Jerry's cookie dough has to be my all-time favorite, and it's definitely a favorite of my kids. I have to say, I'm always very popular if I come home from work with some Ben and Jerry's for the freezer. But my current favorite licensed product is the new launch that we've just had in the UK on the Reese's, and because it's up for an award, of course, I'm eating more and more of it.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing those insights, those strategic insights with everybody. And we really appreciate your being so candid here. So thank you.
Thank you again, Julie, for coming and sharing those insights. All right, next, I want to talk about numbers. It's always important to understand where the money is flowing, and tracking the numbers will shed some light on that. So first, I'll start with a little clip of licensing. It's almost become mainstream if you watch the show The Shark Tank. Let's talk about numbers, and I think back to my early days when I worked at DC Comics, division of Warner Brothers, doing the Batman licensing. And I remember filling out the forms. I remember negotiating, and it's the same negotiation we're doing today. And in my mind, there are two key numbers. Now, in the legal part, we'll talk about some of the other key aspects, but in my mind and in our process, there are two key numbers. And back then, there were two key numbers that everybody had to work towards. Number one is the royalty rate. And that is that number, when we define a royalty rate, that is the number, the percentage of your wholesale sales, typically wholesale sales, that you'll be receiving as a licensor. So in that example, and we're going to show you an example of that in a minute. The second key number is what we call the minimum royalty payment guarantee. It's got a lot of different names. People call it different things, but I like to call it the minimum royalty payment guarantee. Some people call it the minimum guarantee. Some people say it's the MG. Some people call it the minimum royalty guarantee. Whatever it is, this is how it's defined. It is the floor amount that the manufacturer must pay, whether or not they make one product or a million products. It's that floor amount that they are guaranteeing to pay to the licensor. So we can talk about that a little bit more. And again, the royalty rate is defined again. It's your sales times your royalty rate equals the royalty amount. So if there is $1 million in sales, multiply that by 10%, you come up with $100,000 is your royalty amount. Simple math, 100 million in sales, royalty rate, we're in this example 10%, $100,000 is your royalty amount. That's your royalty rate. And what is your minimum royalty payment guarantee? Well, here we're saying, based on our last example, if you are projecting to sell $1 million and the 10% royalty will then say you're projecting to deliver $100,000 in royalty, well, then there's a floor. And in my example, the floor is going to be $50,000 will be the minimum royalty payment guarantee. In my experience, the floor amount, this minimum royalty payment amount, is roughly 50% of your projected royalty payment. So in our example again, our projected royalty payment is $100,000. And so in this case, the minimum royalty payment guarantee is going to be $50,000. Now some licensors might want more, some, depending on their demand, might take less, but in my experience, 50% seems to be a good industry average. So sticking with numbers, here's a question. The example here is, and the question is, who makes more on the sale of one Dunder Mifflin t-shirt? Is it NBC Universal, who owns The Office? Is it XYZ t-shirt company that's making the t-shirt? Or is it Target, the place where this retailer, where this t-shirt is being sold? So here's some numbers, and the t-shirt is on sale at Target for $10. The wholesale price is $5. Royalty rate is 10%. These numbers are just made up for this example. Do you have an answer in your mind? Well, the answer is Target stores makes the most money on the sale of one t-shirt. And why is that? Well, for the most part, they are paying the most. They're paying $5 and they are then selling it for $10. And so they make that margin of $5 in profit. And so they're making the most. Next up is XYZ T-shirt company. They are, in this example, and again, it's just a made-up example, they are selling it for $5. That's the wholesale price. It costs them, we're saying it costs them $3, which includes the royalty payment. So they have a margin, perhaps, of $2. So they have a 40% margin, which is good. Not as good as the retailer, but it's good. And then finally, the last on the chain is the NBC Universal. In our made-up example, they are earning 50 cents on the sale of this one t-shirt. The interesting thing here is that they have very little overhead against that 50-cent number. So in this example, their margin is quite high because they don't have a lot of cost associated with that. Of course, they have the cost of the show and so forth, but a lot of these are called ancillary rights, meaning that they don't have direct expense to that number. They have all their administration, all their licensing costs, of course, but it's unlike Target stores that has to pay $5 in order to sell something for $10 and so forth. So this is just a quick example. And if I were to switch it out and use a food product or use an industrial product, in my experience, the retailer is always making the most money and typically earns the highest margin on the sale of these products as well. So that ends our numbers module. Okay, next we are going to talk about style guides. Now, what is a style guide? A style guide is a document typically created by the creative department of the brand owner, the licensor, and it is a guide to give instructions of how to use that brand to the manufacturers, to the licensees. And in this document, it will show you how to use the logo. It will have different examples. It might have tons of artwork or photography that you can use and so forth. And I'll show you a few things. Now, but first you might be asking, why do we even need instructions? How hard can it be to use a logo, a Vera Wang logo on some products? Well, here's a short little video clip to show you why everybody needs instructions.
And close your eyes and just fall down, okay? Don't worry.
Okay, then Lauren's going to
Close your
catch
eyes,
you.
Close your eyes. Okay.
Okay, it's called the trust fall. Okay, trust fall. Ready, set, go.
Okay, so now here's an example of one of our clients, Scott's Lawn and Garden. And you're thinking, well, Scott's Lawn and Garden, why do they need a logo? Why do they need a style guide? It's pretty simple. It's just a logo. Well, again, everybody needs instructions. Here's a page from their style guide, and you can see the table of contents here, where it gives you the exact packaging designs, the right PMS colors, the right the approval process, the legal notices. All these things are put into the style guide. And some of the pages include the uses, how they can use it, the exact PMS color, the exact colors they can use, and it also includes a lot of do's and don'ts in these documents. With that, I now want to introduce a special guest, Rob Stryer, who works at a company called M Style Marketing that's in the business of creating these style guides. So let's go have a chat with Rob for a minute.
Thank you. So thrilled to be here today and thrilled to be able to talk to everyone. I've been in the licensing industry about 20 years. M Style Marketing's been in business for about 14 years now. We have the honor of working with what we think are some of the best brands in sports, entertainment, consumer product, and certainly licensing. We've been trusted by countless brands to guide their strategy, their marketing, and their creative process about everything that they take and bring to fruition for a brand to come to life and ultimately protect a brand, market a brand, and go forth and to help make great products.
Fantastic. So, Robert, can you take us through an example of some of your work, the idea of a style guide and where it's used and what it's used for and things like that? And for that,
So style guides style guides are inherently kind of complex, and I think most people look at them as a collection of logos and various elements, but really a style guide becomes the most effective way for your brand to be represented. It's a fusion really of strategy, positioning, and creative that gets your brand ready for success. In this case, we're going to walk through this quickly. We're going to discuss World Cup of Hockey with the NHL, and we've been very fortunate. We get to work with the top sports leagues globally and the top movie studios globally on how they build their programs. For World Cup Hockey, everything that you see in the next couple slides, we created from the logos, the colors, the textures that were represented on ice, on broadcast, and throughout product. So every element has brand consistency. The font package is always the same. The color package is always the same. And you can see how every single element, whether it's a jersey patch, whether it's striping, or any piece within the stadium and the stadium decor, are all unified. And what we do is we create a brand package that can be given to every licensee and every partner, so that there's consistency in every single element, whether it's Adidas in this case, and their consumer product program, or ESPN broadcasting this. But every single element is incredibly thought through, so that for each portion of a brand guide, we have strategy, the assets, the brand story, the logos, color palettes, fonts, and then always mock-ups. And what we're really trying to do is bring a brand to life for somebody. It's not just a collection of art and logos and elements. It's really, how are you representing your brand in the most holistic way, in the most true way, so that your brand guide is as much of a sales tool as it is a guide for a licensee to work with.
Great. And how often do you think companies need to refresh their style guide?
So we have certain of our corporate companies refresh them once a year. We have several, especially for people who are doing apparel, do trend programs on a regular basis and do them quarterly, if not seasonally, or for special occasions. We have several clients that are constantly updating them and constantly creating new programs, simply to be able to get more product out there and more look and more feel out there.
Great. Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing those words of wisdom on the style guide. And I assume you're around this at the licensing virtual conference as well, so people can find you online and so forth?
Thank you. No, I appreciate the opportunity. Have a great virtual licensing show. Feel free to email us directly at rob@mstylemarketing.com or look us up through the matchmaker.
Thank you. All right.
Our next module, we're going to talk about retail. It's important to understand retail and some of the trends and what's going on, and because, of course, most of our licensing revolves around products, and those products need to be sold by most of these retailers. In fact, it reminds me of my days at Warner Brothers, where they created a retail business development group. And this is way back in the 90s when this idea first came about. And the idea first came about because I remember the first Batman movie, this is in 1989, was an unbelievable, phenomenal success. It caught everybody off guard. There wasn't enough licensed product in the market. There was almost a run on the black t-shirts, a humongous demand. And then the second movie, called Batman Returns, that was also a success, a huge box office success. However, the merchandise was successful, but not as big as the first movie. And so when it came time to work on the third movie, so I was working on the third movie called Batman Forever. When it came time to work on that, they found that some of the licensees and some of the retailers were not so bullish on the product, and they were not immediately jumping on board to take in the product. And what they found is that the expectations for the second movie were much higher than the actual results. As such, when it came time to talk to Walmart and Target and Kohl's and all these places, they said, you know what, we're going to go soft on this. We're not going to really buy big. And that trickled down to the manufacturers. And then the manufacturers let the people at Warner Brothers know, and me included, to say, you know what, we're not going to go so heavy on this next one because, you know, we saw a product from our old movie and it didn't live up to expectations. And that is when Warner Brothers decided they needed people to start talking to the retailers directly on an ongoing basis and develop deep, important relationships with those retailers. And that was the birth of the Retail Business Development Division in most of these big licensor companies. I know that Disney, they have many people that are working in this retail business development function. In fact, they have an office in Bentonville, right next to Walmart. And they also have an office in Minnesota, right in Minneapolis, next to Target stores. And they had an office, they actually had people down in Dallas. They had people in, you know, in New York also, to talk to some of the key retailers that are buying licensed product. When this division was first set up, I remember at Warner Brothers, they identified 6 key retailers. And those 6 key retailers accounted for roughly 70-80% of all the licensed merchandise that was being sold. So by identifying and really focusing on those key retailers, they were able to really turn the tide. So they set it up, they started talking to the retailers, and sure enough, all the Batman Forever licensees came on board. Why did they come on board? Because they heard that the retailers were now, they saw the opportunity, and then the retailers were now on board. The retailers saw this was going to be a great movie, and they saw the great opportunity, and the licensees came on board, and they all lived happily ever after. Okay, so the first thing to talk about is to really understand who are the big retail players today. And one question is, all right, who are the top 10 retailers and let's just look at America right now. And who are the top 10 retailers in America? Who can that be? And if you were to look at this list 10 years ago, you would see, out of the top 10, you would see at least 5 of them would be on that list, maybe more. But one thing for sure is the person who's number 1 on this list has been number 1 for at least 20 years. It might even be longer. And who is that? Well, that's Walmart. And, you know, their last annual report showing $375 billion in sales with over 5,000 stores is incredible. What an incredible rise, and incredible to see what they've even done during the period, this whole COVID period. Other notables on this list, if you were to say, all right, who is the largest retailer out there selling wine, like Dom Perignon and things like that? It's actually Costco. Another shout out to a company that's done really well during this COVID period. What's interesting is that they only have 510 stores, but they're doing 93 billion. They're right now the fourth largest retailer with that few stores. But talking about a few stores, one notch above them is Amazon. And Amazon is an amazing retailer, of course. And Amazon is a retailer that just 2 years ago had 0 stores. And now that with their acquisition of Whole Foods, with their own stores that are Amazon Go stores where you can quickly run in and out without having to work with a cash register, a checkout person, they have catapulted to the one of the top spots on this list right now. Others on this list that are worth noting, if you look at the CVS and Walgreens, what's notable there is the number of stores that they have. That they have 10,000 stores roughly for CVS, and Walgreens also another 8,000 stores. Along those lines, another notable retailer to talk about is the Dollar Chain, which have even more stores. They have 11, 12, 13,000 stores in those dollar stores. But again, if you were looking at this list and say, all right, where are most of these retail products, these licensed products sold? Well, if you're in the entertainment business, it's probably Walmart and Target on this list for sure. And depending on who else, it might be Kohl's, it might be, years ago it was JCPenney would make the list and so forth. But clearly Walmart is a very important part of any license strategy these days. And when we talk about Walmart, I'm going to show you one example. This is from a photo from a year ago, which is kind of the holy grail of apparel licensing. And it is the men's t-shirt wall at Walmart. And if you look at it, there are 72 slots for t-shirts. And it's almost like the stock market. You want to get your product on there and stay on there. But Walmart, being very sophisticated, they track the sales, of course. And they track it, and if you're doing well, they will move you to a better spot. And if you're not doing well, they might move you out. In fact, the way you break into Walmart, in my experience, is once you pitch them, they may give you a test, and they'll test it in 100, 200, maybe 500 stores, and to see how it does. And if your t-shirt does well, they might increase it to now 1,000 stores or 2,000 stores. And eventually, you'll be up to, you'll have the opportunity to sell in all stores. And if you can sell one t-shirt in all stores, that will generate over $1 million in royalty to you. And that might generate a few million in royalty to you if you could sell a t-shirt in all stores at Walmart. Now, of course, the opposite is experienced to me, where working on behalf of a client, we were able to get a t-shirt in there. We made it into the first round. We had 200 stores, then we had 500 stores, and we were very excited. It was in there for 6 weeks. And then unfortunately, we heard that the sell-through numbers were not strong, and it was being discontinued by Walmart. And that was one of our experiences and so forth. But at the end of the day, they're very sophisticated, and there's great opportunity there. And it's really important to at least know how it works. And that brings us to what we call the business model of retail licensing, because there's two important business models going on here. There is what we call the traditional model, where it is the common business model, where you are a licensor, you're the brand, you might license your t-shirt, your brand to a t-shirt company, a manufacturer, and that manufacturer will then go license the retailer directly. That is your traditional type of scenario. However, I'm here to share with you, and it's important that you know that there is a direct-to-retail, another business model called direct-to-retail. And this direct-to-retail model is having the licensor, the brand owner, will license the retailer directly. And we've seen this grow as a very viable and lucrative business model over the past couple of years. And again, it's very important. I'm going to share a few examples. One person who really wrote the book is Martha Stewart. And she almost built her entire empire by doing these direct-to-retail licenses. And she's been doing it with Macy's, she's done it at Staples, she's done it at Home Depot, and just tremendous brand and so forth. Here's a commercial just to share something with you.
Usher is in the air. Usher's in the air. I know I'm a little biased, but this is great.
Hi, how's the new fragrance going?
You want to try it?
Wow, that's terrific.
It took me forever to design this bottle.
Oh, I was in research for months before I got everything just perfect.
Okay, I worked on 2 fragrances. Now, how many things did you make?
2,000 or so?
Honestly, girl, when do you sleep?
The new Martha Stewart collection, only at Macy's.
I'm going to show one more example, and this is the BuzzFeed brand called Tasty. And Tasty has licensed their brand directly to Walmart, and it's been a tremendous success. And I know Eric Karp has spoken in my NYU class and shared some case studies of how, how selling the Tasty branded products with the marketing power of BuzzFeed behind it, they've had some tremendous success in the pots and pans and many other items as well. But the key point that I'm trying to share is that their license was made directly with Walmart, not made with a manufacturer who then may or may not get into Walmart. It was made directly with Walmart. Some other models, some other examples out there, one is Fanatics. Now Fanatics is now the largest seller of sports merchandise online, and they have taken on brands themselves. They actually have a license with the NFL and with the Super Bowl. So those ads that you see right after the Super Bowl, well, that's actually a shirt, and that whole business of buying that championship shirt and hat, that whole business is through Fanatics. And Fanatics has the license to all the sport leagues. They actually do work with the NFL, NBA, hockey. They have over 100 different licenses. And in fact, if you go to the NFL website and you click on their store, you might not even know it, but it's being managed by Fanatics. It looks like the NFL store, but it's actually you're on the Fanatics website. One more example is what Amazon is doing. Amazon is licensing in also in many different categories. One example is the kids' book, Fireman Sam. What's interesting here is that you can only buy their merchandise, their toys and games and all that. You can only buy that exclusively on Amazon. So Amazon is in the same boat as far as becoming a licensee directly. It's also important to know, as I shared at the beginning, an example of how this retail business development industry has sprung up, or department have sprung up. It's important to understand how that works. So there are a number of different, the key retailers being Target and Walmart have different type of rating systems. And the key, if you're a brand owner and you want to sell your brand to licensees, one of the best selling points is to say to a manufacturer that, hey, my brand has a full store support. We have a 3-star property here at Walmart, and I'm making this up, that Batman, which I believe is the case, Batman is a 3-star property at Walmart. Target Batman is a tier 3 property at Walmart, meaning it has full support in the store, meaning the apparel buyers are on board, the toy buyers want to buy it, even the ice cream buyers want to buy it. And so that is what's meant by full store support. Because what's happened is that because Walmart and Target have looked at their own businesses and understand that they have such a big business around some of these licensed brands, that they want to really capitalize on it themselves. And they find that if they can support some of these brands themselves, they can really benefit. So if there's a movie coming out, whether it's Trolls or Spider-Man or Wonder Woman, and the retailer gets behind it in a big way, then the retailer can really benefit and be the destination for all the Wonder Woman merchandise. And in that way, we have seen this whole system of 1-star, 2-star, 3-star being developed. Now 1-star, just to define it, that is when a buyer supports it. So maybe you have a Batman, I'll just use that as an example, and they go and they pitch it, and the toy buyer's like, oh yeah, I love it, I support it. I'm going to buy toys throughout my entire department, all types of toys, action toys and play sets and Lego and all this with Batman on it. So that's called a one-star property. Our next section is legal. We're now going to talk briefly about two areas. One is counterfeiting and the other are contracts. And we're just taking a very high-level approach here. And if you want a deeper dive, there's other licensing seminars for sure you should look into. But the two key points are, one is counterfeiting. And what I'll say on counterfeiting is that counterfeiting is bad. It's been a major issue forever. I mean, as long as I've been part of the licensing industry, over 25 years. I think back to my days at Yves Saint Laurent, where counterfeiting was an issue, a major issue back then, where they were part of a coalition that would hire detectives to try to stop the counterfeiters, to today, where a lot of these counterfeiters are now operating online. And the same goes true. A lot of licensors are spending a lot of money to really track this down. I think back to my class at NYU, we had a guest from the FBI come in and talk about counterfeiting and talk about how it's not just counterfeiting, you know, a Super Bowl t-shirt these days. They're actually, counterfeiters have turned to counterfeiting, you know, airbags for cars and other safety things and things like that. So counterfeiting is ugly and it's very hard to detect these days. But top level view is counterfeiting is bad. It's part of any legal discussion, so I wanted to bring it up here. All right, second is the contract. As you go and you have your licensee is now forming a contract with a licensor, it's time to negotiate that contract. And there might be 25 different clauses in that contract. I'm really going to share with you just 4 or 5 of the big ones, or 4 of the important ones to me. Number 1 is the royalty rate. And what you'll see on this chart is that it's all a negotiation. Of course, the first rule of negotiation is everything's negotiable, but in all seriousness, when you're negotiating here, it's all about negotiation, because here are the 4 key points. The royalty rate. Okay, the royalty rate. The licensee, the manufacturer, wants to pay as low as possible. The brand owner, of course, wants a high rate. So there's some negotiation there. That same dynamic for the minimum royalty payment guarantee. The manufacturer wants to keep it low. The licensor many times wants to maximize that number. And then there's exclusivity, another key clause. And for that exclusivity, the licensee wants to make sure that they have it exclusively. So they can realize that key principle in licensing, that to provide them with that sustainable competitive advantage. While the licensor, they might not want to be handcuffed. They might say, oh, you know what? Let me just work with them on a non-exclusive basis. Just in case they don't perform, I can work with somebody else and get out of this exclusivity clause and things like that. And then finally, another key aspect when you're doing your contract is the definition of net sales. And this definition of net sales, it's the net sales minus, it's your gross sales minus deductions equals net sales. It's a very important clause on these contracts. And what happens here is that the licensee, they want a number of deductions. They might want to deduct some of their product development costs, their returns, their unsold, their returns for damaged goods. They might want to deduct some of their marketing costs or shopper marketing costs or advertising or things like that. While the licensor, they want to minimize the number of deductions that are allowed. They want to make sure that they are maximizing that number. That net sales should be as close to the gross sales as possible, according to the licensors. So there's of course a negotiation there. But in theory, on that point, it's all about trying to make sure that the net sales equals the actual number that the retailer is paying for that product. And that's where the royalty should be based, in our opinion. So top line is there's a contract, there's important legal aspects to that, and there'll be some negotiation, and you should just be aware and be prepared for some of those negotiations. So that is our legal bit today. Okay, so now I'm going to leave you with one more case study. In this case study, we've heard a little bit about it before. It's all about Scotts and Miracle-Gro. And Scotts and Miracle-Gro, we're going to talk about a case study revolving a corporate brand. And how do we license out this corporate brand? Well, in this case, I'm going to share with you that we do what our firm does, which is we created a licensing strategic plan, kind of a roadmap to really answer two key questions. Number one is, where do consumers give these brands permission to extend to? And number two is, how much revenue should they expect, which is another key aspect. And with that, we went out and started to explore licensing, and wouldn't you know it, the first proposal we got was from a friend in the entertainment business that said, hey, wait, can we do these cool underwear? And the answer was no at the time, because it is just not on the strategic plan. And we had a very thought out strategic plan. And also we believe in what the great Philip Kotler, who wrote many of the marketing textbooks, has always said, that it's more important to do what's strategically right than what's immediately profitable. So because of that, we did not do that boxer short. Now let's talk about a bamboo stick. Do you think this would be successful? Do you think this is something that Miracle-Gro would lend their brand to? And these bamboo sticks, they're needed. You use it to grow tomatoes and so forth. We call this product a plant support. And if you're thinking, I wonder, this can't really be much, the answer is, it is something very big. And it is big, and this is what it looks like in a display case. This is what it looks like at all the Home Depot stores. It's also currently in every Walmart store. And the reason is that it hits all key P's, the 4 P's of marketing. It's a great product. The company has been making this product as a generic product for many years, so they have some real product expertise. It's at the right price. The promotion, in this case I call it a POP display, is fantastic. And finally, the place, the distribution. This company had all the right vendor numbers, all the right retailer relationships to make this product a great success. So this product of bamboo sticks was a great hit. Next one is, what about garden hoses? So the answer is, looking at what's going on in the business, if you looked at any garden shelf, any store today, you'll see a lot of brands that you will not really recognize. Even Soft and Supple, that's actually a current brand on the market today. But none of these brands are advertised. And that's why when you take a brand like Scotts or Miracle-Gro that's backed by over $100 million in marketing, they really seem to be a real leader in and can grab a lot of market share in the hose industry. And this is what the Miracle-Gro lightweight line looks like. Some other products that we've had success with are the gloves and the live plants, and the just launched a lithium-ion powered lawnmower. Even garden kits for kids have been fun. And it brings up our final principle of licensing that I want to leave you with, is that all licensing can be risky. But it's important to really take those risks and to manage those risks. In fact, doing nothing is a risk itself. So with that, I'm now going to close by sharing here. I'm just going to review the top 3 principles, or my favorite 3 principles in licensing. Number 1, licensing can make a good product great. Number 2, licensing can provide that sustainable competitive advantage. And number 3, that all licensing is risky, but it's a matter of managing those risks and taking those important calculated risks. I'm now going to leave you with what I call my 4 P's in not in marketing, but in licensing. Number 1, first P is for plan, is that we believe it's important to create a licensing strategic plan. And we believe that to have great success, you need a plan. Number 2 is partner, that it's important to really find and work with the best partners out there. Number 3 is profit. And I use the word profit to come up with your own metrics. And whatever those metrics are, let's come back every 6 months or a year and see how we're doing and really measure the whole performance of your licensing program. And then number 4, finally, a shout out to all of us in the service business that to consider using professionals. And using experts can really help accelerate your own success, can bring you the expertise, bring you the access, bring you the efficiency to really help make your program a success and minimize your risk. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, and please feel free to reach out to me reach out to me on LinkedIn, reach out to me on email, and I look forward to hearing from you all and answering your questions and seeing you live at the next licensing show, hopefully. Thanks again.